What is up, and welcome to another edition of the Bruin Bible, a one that we were very, stressed about. Chip Kelly could have been on the move to Oregon. He is coming back. We're going to be talking about Chip. We're going to be talking about the big name transfers that have just committed to coming to UCLA and why UCLA is not finished in the transfer portal. And yesterday was National Signing Day, so we're going to talk about some recruits. We got the man, the myth, the legend in the house, Jamal Madni. Mad Dog, what is going on, my man, on this Thursday evening?
Great to see you as always, man. Excited to talk some Bruin football here. There's a lot to be excited about in the future.
A lot to be excited about is right, and that starts at the top with Chip Kelly. We had a group podcast, an emergency podcast last week. This is the last time we had an episode of the Bruin Bible. I think you and I were on the fence that he would even return to UCLA. You gave it as much as a 60 to 80% chance at the time. I think I was about 50-50 split. Ryan went to 0 to 20%. He's the guy who ultimately won the whole thing on that. But I think losing Chip would have been a huge problem for this program. It's kind of like, if you're going to lose this guy, do better. This guy has had a top 30 offense the last 2 to 3 years when he's at UCLA. Obviously, the defensive problems still stand there, but this is a guy that I think is integral if UCLA wants to make that jump to the 9 to 10 wins a season category. Jamal, I'm going to ask you off the rip, 1 to 10, how important is this for UCLA to get Chip Kelly back in the Rose Bowl?
Will, it's a 9. There's just no question about it. He's absolutely the right guy for the job in terms of when you look at competence, when you look at all of the different things that make up this program. He's the absolute right guy to lead it. And he's shown it in different places, and he's finally getting that opportunity now with a little bit of runway, and let's see what he can do. But it was absolutely pivotal. I think the only reason I don't give it a 10 is I think we want to see Chip with a new defensive coordinator next year. But in terms of the man at the top, this is a no-brainer. And when you look at offensive minds in college football, really there is no one, that's second to Chip Kelly. When you talk about the modern architect of college football and what he's sort of been able to do with these new wrinkles. UCLA offense is a lot more of a power look, a lot more tight end heavy, a lot more bunch formations than the more spread concepts that he ran at Oregon. And so he's already coming up with derivatives and variations of his innovations from a decade ago. And if you just give him some more reps with the continuity of his type of players, UCLA is going to be reaping a lot of success. And so there's a lot to be excited about going into 2022.
18 and 25 career as the head coach at UCLA. And I understand there were some frustrated fans. They said, we gave him 3 years. He didn't get anything done. I just preach a little bit more patience. 8 and 4 this year. Offense looked like it was rolling to end the season. We had the Charbonnet piece there. We had DTR looking the best he's ever looked in a Bruins uniform. The offensive pass game opened up. I mean, Dulcich had that big game against Cal the last week. No surprise there. That guy, I think with more volume, could have been a Mackey Award winner. He might be able to come back too, as we talked about earlier today. Kaz Allen really was kind of explosive at the end of the year. Kyle Phillips just doing Kyle Phillips things under the radar as always, but super solid, making big time catches. I like the way this program is trending. And you add to that, Jamal, we got some huge news in Westwood today. Dillon Gabriel, arguably the top quarterback in the entire transfer portal, is coming to UCLA. Where were you when you heard the news today, and how big is this for the Bruins?
Yeah, ironically, Will, I was talking to my dad, and we were kind of talking about some father-son things and catching up a little bit, and he's an ardent UCLA fan, bleeds blue and gold, and the news broke, and right in the middle of the conversation, I was like, Dad, we got Dillon Gabriel, and he sort of let out a woohoo in a way that I haven't heard him say in quite some time, probably since basketball season, and so really excited about that. This is the equivalent of getting between a 4 and a 5-star prospect at the quarterback position. And even if you argue that Gabriel at 6 feet, 200 pounds is a little bit undersized, his skill set in that Chip offense is going to be seamless. And when you couple it with that experience, this is like getting a 5-star recruited quarterback. It's really an incredible thing. And when you look at what Chip was able to do over the course of DTR's career, with a guy that really only had 1 year under center before Chip got him at Bishop Gorman. Now you look at a guy like Gabriel, who has played 3 seasons, 2.5 seasons, with the third being cut short by injury at UCF. I think the sky is the limit here.
I mean, Dillon Gabriel, you look at the numbers, and I was aware of him coming in because Central Florida does have, some ESPN package deals. They are playing big time games. 70 career touchdown passes to just 14 picks. I mean, those are outstanding numbers. Was starting as a true freshman where he was able to throw for over 30 plus touchdowns. He was coached by Josh Heupel, who's now the head coach at Tennessee, a quarterback guru. And you mentioned he's like those Oregon quarterbacks we saw with Chip. He reminds me, and granted, he's lefty compared to this. Remember Jeremiah Masoli, kind of a smaller quarterback, able to make plays in the pocket. This guy looks exactly like that. The Darren Thomases, the Jeremiah Masolis. This guy has that it factor that Chip loves to get at the quarterback position. And boy, he might be a little undersized, but this guy throws as pretty of a deep ball as you will see in college football. And it's not like he's playing against, crap opponents. Cincinnati is in the American Conference. They are playing in the college football playoff. Memphis has had some very competitive teams. They went to the Cotton Bowl 2 years ago. They are in the American Conference. So it's not like this guy is coming from Appalachian State or one of those smaller schools. This guy can ball. And I am thrilled that Dillon Gabriel is in a UCLA uniform. He is going to have to beat out Ethan Garbers, who Garbers is a very talented quarterback. I don't want to, put that over Garbers saying Gabriel's got the job now, but he's got to be the favorite coming in there. And I'm really glad you said that, getting the likes of Gabriel is equivalent to getting a 4 or 5-star prospect. For me, the transfer portal is so big if you can get those impact players. And Bruins fans, I mean, we saw this all year long with Charbonnet, Quantrez Knight, talented guys that came in and were integral to our team's success this year. You get a guy like Gabriel coming in, this guy is going to change the landscape of this team, and it's going to put us into competition for potentially the Pac-12 championship. I am thrilled with Gabriel. And we got to add another guy to this, Jake Bobo. This guy can ball too. Huge receiver, 6'5". Kyle Phillips is our guy, right? And he's led the team in catches the previous 3 years. Jake Bobo had 75 catches this year. That is 15 more than Phillips has ever had in one season in his career. Give me your thoughts on Bobo, because I'm watching some of the tape and I'm liking what I'm seeing.
Well, it's incredible. And let me double click back on Gabriel for a second here too, and combine it with Bobo. Lane Kiffin said something a couple days ago, and whenever Lane Kiffin says something, it seemingly always goes viral, but he was spot on here. And he said that free agency has arrived in college football, and free agency is not only a yearly thing, but especially when you talk about the transfer portal not having sort of an entry and an exit period, that you can sort of enter into the transfer portal at any point in the offseason. Every day is kind of like free agency. And what that does is it democratizes talent across the country. And no longer do you need to be overly obsessive with depth at recruiting. You want to be able to get your guys, but you want to be able to show that you have a vision and the ability to execute on a strategy from a schematic standpoint to recruit guys off of the transfer portal. And so what this does, this is Chip Kelly's dream machine here, the transfer portal. This is everything that maybe are his weaknesses of being charismatic in a living room, of being able to sell the university and the football program, of sort of oozing that charisma of some of the Big Ten and SEC coaches. This democratizes all of that in a very unique way. And when you couple that with Chip's just X's and O's moxie, it really is a dream scenario, and why this is such a perfect fit with Chip at UCLA. And now kind of going back to Gabriel for a second here, Will, you talked about 70 touchdowns, 14 interceptions over 26 career starts, a 5-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. What's also significant, as you mentioned, 18-8 as a starter. which is an incredible record. He's a winner. But what's also, even if you double click off of that, 7 of the 8 losses were by single digits. So this guy has been in every game. 25 of the 26 starts that he's had, he's given his team an opportunity to win the game with mid-level talent at Central Florida in a post-Mackenzie Melton era. And so looking at that, this guy's a winner. The deep ball you mentioned, I think, is a match made in heaven when you couple him with a Kaz Allen, a Cam Brown, as well as a Jaden Marshall, which I hopefully we'll get to later in the show. You know, you're talking about a match made in heaven in terms of deep ball, the RPO game. This could be really the steal of the offseason when it comes to Gabriel. And now kind of jumping over to Bobo, 6'5", 215 pounds, out of Duke. A big guy. He's got over 100 career receptions, over 1,000 career yards. He had 72 catches at Duke this year at 11 yards per reception. He's a much bigger guy than Phillips, but he's going to play that Phillips role next year in the event that Ryan Dyrud, our founder and CEO, said that Phillips is going to make an NFL team very happy next year. In the event that Nostradamus is true, I think Bobo is going to slide into that role and do it in a different way because he's a bigger guy, he's a longer guy, but he's going to be that move the chains guy and sort of that slot receiver when you couple him with kind of the incoming tight ends. And now you got that deep game with these 3 receivers and then the RPO game. I mean, Chip's got to be salivating here. These 2 are just home run gets in terms of his system.
Salivating is right. And I like the comparison of Bobo going into the Phillips role as a slot wideout. I think it's going to be a seamless transition. And you just get guys that are experienced. And I think that is a big thing because a lot of these recruits, even if they are 4 or 5 stars, it takes them a while to get on the field and make an impact because college football is so much bigger than high school football for any recruit, whether it's a 5-star, it's a 3-star, just trying to make the defensive unit or the offensive unit. I'm excited about that. You brought up Jaden Marshall, and I'm really excited to talk about this guy. That is like the number 1 recruit I'm stoked for. And I want to bring this up too, because you combine, we only had 11 signees for UCLA in the recruiting class. But when you break it down, 6 of them were 4-star players. So we're doing good things on the recruiting front. And you combine that with the transfer portal where you can add, you know, most classes usually have 22 to like 27 guys. Chip is not done at all in the transfer portal. And there's going to be a lot more guys coming. For our sake, I'm hoping we can get some secondary guys in there to kind of, you know, complement what we got with Kamari Ramsey, the flip from Stanford, highest rated player in UCLA's class this year. He looks like a stud. But if you can continue to combine big name transfers, your Charbonnets, your Dillon Gabriels with your Kamari Ramseys or your Jaden Marshalls, this team is built for success. And I got to be honest, I think the Pac-12 South, maybe even the Pac-12 as a whole, if Chip keeps progressing like we think he can, is going to run through that UCLA-USC game at the end of the year. And this rivalry will be officially back in Los Angeles, folks. So get your popcorn ready. It's going to be a lot of fun these next few years. You brought up Jaden Marshall, and I turned on the tape, Jamal. This man is electric. Welcome to the Electric Factory when you watch a guy like Jaden Marshall. This guy is going to play football, and he's going to run track at UCLA. This guy is exciting. But what I thought of as a longtime Chip Kelly follower, he got his DeAnthony Thomas. This is the guy, the explosive guy you could take on kick returns, punt returns. You could line him up as a running back. You can line him up in the slot, send him deep. Can you imagine Dillon Gabriel firing deep balls to this guy next year? Like, he's going to come in and make an impact day one. At least that is my prediction of a guy like Jaden Marshall. Is he the guy you're most excited about in the recruiting class like I am?
No question about it, Will. There's 3 guys that jump off the page for me in this recruiting class. One is Jaden Marshall. The other you mentioned is Kamari Ramsey. And the third is Carson Ryan. Yeah. And these are the 3 that I'm most excited about. And the reason I'm super high and bullish on Jaden Marshall is exactly what you said. 6'1", 180 pounds, absolutely electric. This is UCLA's DeAnthony Thomas, no question about it. And what I'm very excited about is, can you imagine splitting out Jaden Marshall out wide with Kaz Allen? You're talking about the two safeties in that scenario. They're going to be 45 yards down the field. And even when you talk about Dillon Gabriel and the beautiful deep ball that he will throw, and I think we'll see some great connections along those lines. But what that does in terms of opening up the middle of the field for the Bobos, for the tight ends to be able to exploit is going to be very significant in what Chip is trying to do, as well as maintain that run-pass balance in a very significant way. Obviously, we don't want to get our hopes too high for a true freshman, but I think just having him on the field as a freshman, making a few plays and even serving as the decoy, because you have to respect speed, no matter what level, no matter what age, no matter what level of polish and experience, speed is speed. And so that automatically gives Jaden Marshall a currency and a respect factor when he steps out on the field in college football. And so I'm very excited about Marshall. Carson Ryan is the other one that I'm very excited about because, again, it's the case of Chip getting his guy. When you look at Greg Dulcich and just the incredible last couple of years he's had at UCLA, arguably the usage rate lower than even what it should be when he's had the ball and been able to make such effective plays. The LSU game jumps out, key catches against Stanford, the SC game last year. He's obviously a perennial Mackey Award candidate. But let's go back. Let's look at Caleb Wilson. Let's look at Devin Asiasi. Chip has had now a run of 3 consecutive high-quality NFL caliber tight ends, and Carson Ryan now is that next chain in that succession plan. And I look at him much in the way Bobo is going to fill into that Phillips slot. I look at a Carson Ryan eventually taking over for that Dulcich spot, and you're starting to now see that core Chip identity getting replicated year over year. And dare I use the R word with Chip and UCLA, because he's not a great recruiter, but they're starting to reload in exactly the way they want to. And that's when you start seeing the level of success as a program. The third recruit, go for it.
Go for it, man. I'm excited, man. I can just say that off the rip. Carson Ryan's a guy, and like you said, that open middle of the field is going to be something special. They also got a guy named Jack Peterson there, too, who's a 4-star tight end. This guy is going to be great. You can use those dual tight ends that both can go up and catch the football. And this is founded on year after year tight end success, like you were claiming. Caleb Wilson broke records at UCLA. Asiasi, top, 4 or 5 round draft pick, went to the NFL. It's a big, credible, thing for recruits to see as you're putting guys to the pros. Greg Dulcich. My theory on Greg Dulcich, I am the biggest Dulcich fan there is. It's like when people are like, Steph Curry should shoot more threes because his percentage is so crazy, like he just needs to keep firing. They just need to keep passing the ball to Dulcich. That is just my theory. And there's a potential chance he could come back. I would probably advise him against it if I was, someone looking at the NFL. But boy, if you can get a Dulcich back, maybe even a Charbonnet, do you know how nasty this team will be with Gabriel at quarterback next year? This is going to be a top 10 off. I'll put my name on that. This is a top 10 offense in football next year. If Charbonnet comes back as well as our boy Dulcich. But another guy we got to talk about, Justin Martin is a very, very, very talented quarterback. And it's going to be a while till he sees the field, given Gabriel's there. I don't know how much eligibility exactly a guy like Garbers has, but Garbers, he proved his worth to me. I think he's a very solid, competent quarterback that could come in and fill in there. By the way, like we said, not totally Gabriel's job just yet. So Garbers could be the guy for all we know. But Justin Martin, he is so comfortable in the pocket, and he has an absolute laser of an arm. We're talking like, give this guy, 4 years to focus on football. I am excited to see some of the bombs this guy's throwing. We talked about Gabriel's deep ball. Martin can throw the ball probably 60 to 70 yards. Like, I'm just being frankly honest with that. He had a 13 touchdown game in high school football. Man, I would be happy if I scored 1 touchdown in high school football. This guy got 13. Like, how the hell do you let that happen? Justin Martin, he's the man. We mentioned Jack Peterson. These are all studs, man. And I really want to just kind of cap things off. We got to look at the schedule. The schedule release was today, my man,
Well,
Jamal.
can I say one more thing before we cap off the recruiting?
Please, we encourage it.
Kamari Ramsey. I don't think we can finish the recruiting conversation without talking about Kamari Ramsey. And Kamari Ramsey is perhaps the most important recruit in the history of the Chip Kelly era.
Whoa, okay.
And the reason I say that is not because of the position that he plays, and I think he's going to be terrific at safety, coming in for Trez Knight and Quentin Lake that are going to move on as super seniors. But look where he flipped from. Stanford might be the hardest place to flip a recruit because of what that institution is, both on the field, but more important, academically. And when a student athlete chooses to go to Stanford, there is a different set of priorities about being a holistic student athlete that is very unique to Stanford that really no other Division I football program can offer. And it's the reason why 95 times out of 100, when Stanford targets a player, they get their guy. And the fact that they were able to flip Kamari Ramsey from Stanford to go to UCLA shows the power of the holistic UCLA experience, both on the field as well as off the field. And I know we love to talk about the crosstown rivalry with USC and UCLA, but the school that UCLA thinks about at night is not USC. It's Stanford. That is the school that UCLA wants to be at its core, both on the field and off the field. And the fact that they were able to flip Kamari Ramsey from Stanford sets a precedence now that there may be a recruiting pipeline and a pathway to really compete with Stanford head-to-head on some of these gem athletes moving forward that are rock stars on the field as well as in the classroom. And so I wanted to really highlight that point because it's unique to UCLA.
Yeah, the Ramsey signing was huge. And I remember just checking my phone, got the update, Ramsey flipped. This is a guy that's local to LA, too. It's a Sierra Canyon guy. Mostly known for basketball. I mean, that's where LeBron's son's playing. They've had a number of prospects come up through the ranks there. But we have, if we can start getting more LA, like 4- and 5-star guys to come looking our way, and this could be the start of that. You know, flipping a Kamari Ramsey could be the start of us, you know, dipping into modern day and dipping into these other institutions that have historically, you've got a great player, they go to SC type of thing. I think this is massive as well. And I want to get your take on this. My pick was Jaden Marshall to see the field early next year. In your opinion, do you think Kamari Ramsey is the most likely player to get early playing time for UCLA next year?
I think so, Will, because I think when you factor in his level of polish and his ball skills at the high school level, coupled with who UCLA is losing in the back end, I think that the combination of being ready as well as opportunity, I see Ramsey being on the field faster and a little bit more consistent than even Marshall in that regard. But when Marshall's going to be on the field, get your popcorn ready. You got to be on the edge of your seat because, 2 track stars on the field is just going to be bonkers next year. It's going to be just must see.
Him and Kaz Allen, I give me all the film on that because I'm super excited for that. And, you know, my Christmas list, Jamal, pretty short this year. At the top of that list, let's get Jimmy Lake to UCLA. Can you imagine Ramsey training with the premier defensive back coach that's been in the Pac-12 over the last 5 years? You get Jimmy Lake with Kamari Ramsey. Ramsey's going to go to the league. Like if that actually lines up to be, I would put $100 tomorrow that Ramsey is going to make the NFL at some point. Jamal, lucky for us, we got the schedule release coming through. We're going to give our predictions on the 2022 slate. But before we do that, we got to go to our sponsors. MyBookie. It's the only place we bet at. Use promo code LAFB to get a discount with your MyBookie account. It's a phenomenal website. Check it out. MyBookie, promo code LAFB. Let's get to the schedule, my man. First 3 games, pretty easy for out of conference. LSU we had last year. Even Fresno State's kind of a hell of a program that, I think they've beaten us 4 straight times now. It's literally insane from Fresno State. It's Bowling Green, Alabama State, South Alabama. I'm going to chalk up those to 3-0. I'm just going to kind of leave it at that. But this is kind of where it gets interesting. We go Colorado, September 24th, and that is the first road game of the season. Do you think we take that one? Just gut feeling, not knowing what's going to happen in the transfer portal, what Colorado looks like next year under Darrell.
Yeah, first road game, Will, is always a little tricky, so they'll probably start off a little slow, but that's got to be a win and will be.
4-0. I love it. Washington, rebuilt, Jimmy Lake gone. They just got Michael Penix, the transfer from Indiana. Do you think this is a potential win? I do, because I think a new administration, new coaching staff, it's going to take them a while to kind of figure things out. UCLA fans, I know you're with me because we dealt with it with Chip for 3 years. I think that's a victory. Where do you go with that?
Yeah, Will, I agree as well, considering that, UCLA beat Washington this year. And while Jimmy Lake would be an incredible defensive coordinator for any program, the challenge that he was having at Washington was recruiting. And so even in this sort of transition to the new regime, I don't think Washington's recruiting class is going to be up to snuff this year. So you have to assume they're going to be about the same level of team as they were last year. And if that is in fact the case, and there aren't some grand slams in the transfer portal, that's a very winnable game for UCLA.
I love it, man. We are 5-0 going into our first big game of the year, Utah. And this team, the resilience they've shown, I've had Brian Brown, who does the Locked On Utes podcast this year on. I mean, it is just phenomenal. Kyle Whittingham just proving time and time again how good of a coach he is. That's going to be a dogfight. But what does benefit us is that is a home game. We don't have to go to that tough environment in Salt Lake City to play Utah. If Dillon Gabriel is on a hot streak at this point, I think I'm going to favor. It's going to be a duel between him and Cam Rising. I don't know. This one is a coin flip game, but I think I'm going to go UCLA. What do you think on that?
I love it, Will. I love the optimism. I love the passion. I think, in fairness, this is probably an L for me, just because I think Rising now coming back year 2. Everyone forgets that Utah's 9-3. Rising took over the third game, the second half of the third game. So 2 of those 3 losses are not even attributed to Rising, really. I mean, he's 8-1 as a starter. Let's see how things go in the Rose Bowl for Utah. But you're talking about a guy who's essentially going to win 90% of his games at Utah, and coming in that year 2. That's a hard one for me to say that's going to be a W as it stands right now.
And I think if we are on paper 5-0 going into that game, I don't think the analysts will take us seriously unless we beat Utah to go 6-0. I think that is a potential season-defining game for UCLA, given where they want to go next year, given some potential talent returning. We discussed the Dulcich, Charbonnet potential returnees there. If those guys come back, the hype will be huge. That is kind of the game I've got circled where I will be at the Rose Bowl tailgating with my man Mad Dog right here, having an awesome time. So, yes, check us out for that. The next week is at Oregon. It's a Dan Lanning first year at Oregon. We've never seen him as a head coach in college football. He does, to his credit, have a ton of returning talent at Oregon. A lot of good defenders. That's his specialty. Some great offensive players. They had that excellent receiving core with Jalen Redd, a couple of Johnny Johnson, a couple other dudes. Do you think Chip can go in there and beat Oregon next year? Because I need to see at least a little bit of Dan Lanning to be proven correct that this was the right hire for Oregon.
Agreed, Will. I think there's a lot of question marks with Oregon. I know that the Oregon players really excited about Dan Lanning. He's young, 35, very energetic, high-energy recruit. But I must say it was a puzzling decision, especially in sort of the lead up to it. And you wonder what's really going on behind the scenes with Oregon, between Phil Knight, between Dan Mullins, and between the other boosters. Doesn't completely feel like they're on the same page. Having said all of that, I think that this game, it's hard to predict this game this far out, Will. But for me, assuming where we are at running back, and I'm assuming that Charbonnet and obviously Brown are not going to be with us, for obvious reasons. It's hard for me to pick UCLA over Oregon given the current state of the running back room. I think that could change, certainly, depending on who we get in the portal. But as it stands right now, roster-wise, at Eugene, that's a tough place to play. You have to be able to run the ball. And I just don't see enough right now on the running back roster to convince me at this stage. But I'm sure we're going to be doing this again in 8 months, and I think our roster will be different then. And so that's kind of a check back. But I think we're at 5-2 as it stands right now.
Yeah, I think this will be my first loss officially. I think, like you said, Oregon on the road, Outson is arguably the most intimidating stadium to go into as an opponent in the Pac-12. Lanning's got a ton of talent there. I need to see more of it to be proven correct, but I think me just putting it down on paper, I'm just going to go Oregon in this game, and I think Oregon gets potentially the first loss of the year. Stanford's always a crapshoot too. Them and Utah, it's like even a bad Stanford or Utah team, like they can really take it to you any given week. I think this one's a tough one to kind of predict. On paper, I like what we have more than Stanford does with David Shaw. David Shaw really needs a prove-it year, though, next year. I do believe that. If he does not kind of live up to the hype next season, I think there will be rumors of him being on the hot seat, despite how successful his tenure has been since Harbaugh has left. Give me your thoughts. Just gut feeling, do you think Stanford, UCLA, do you think UCLA gets the W?
I do. And I think that Stanford is the team, really excellent recruiting class this year. They're still sort of hovering in that top 15 range. But I think Stanford is a team that's in heavy transition right now. And I think that they've been kind of on the downswing the last couple of years. I think Shaw was able to piggyback off of that Harbaugh success and identity. And truthfully, he struggled when he's had to do it on his own. I think where UCLA is headed, where they want to go, this is a win at home. I love UCLA to be 6-2 here.
This is a potentially sleeper tough game. Arizona State, it's not a team that jumps out to you, like the Utahs, the USCs. Jaden Daniels is coming back, though, and he's going to be the most experienced quarterback in the Pac-12. Have I liked all of his years as a passer? No, but those Johnny Wilson, who is one of the highest rated receivers in the entire Rivals recruiting database, he's going to be a junior now. LV Bunkley Shelter. This guy was a top 4-star recruit. He's going to be a junior now. Like, these guys are upperclassmen. I feel like ASU and UCLA, it's going to be a bigger matchup than we think. And I think this can potentially move to like a Saturday night ESPN game because both these teams are going to be, 6-2, 7-1 coming into this game. I don't know where to go on this. I think I would take Chip over Herm right now, just schematically. That's where I would go with my gut feeling. What does yours tell you, Jamal?
Yeah, Will, I feel the same way. And UCLA, Arizona State, weird things seem to happen when we get together in some of these matchups. Looking at the schedule, looking where they are, I have a funny feeling something is going to happen here, and maybe UCLA doesn't have their best. They don't have their fastball. And I think this is going to be an L in sort of a bizarre kind of game.
I feel that. I think just for me, I think I would favor Kelly over Herm, but anything could potentially happen. It's a road game. It's going to be a tough environment. I'm sure Arizona State's going to put on the pressure for UCLA to kind of bring their A game that night. The last three, we can just go in order. U of A, I don't think they've improved enough to potentially get a win there, so I think that's a win. The last game of the season is at Cal, which, kind of follows this year's pattern of us playing Cal for that last game of the season. And the big granddaddy of them all, the USC game in the Rose Bowl, which I am very hyped about. I think we have a chance this year to beat USC. And I'm not just speaking out of this because we are rooting for USC. I think it's going to take Lincoln Riley a full year to get that engine going because it's a whole new staff coming in. It's going to take a lot of time figuring it out. We're familiar with Jackson Dart. I think he can be very good. But I need to see maybe a little bit more to be going against that USC team. They did not get Elias Ricks, which I thought was a done deal to SC. The fact that he went to Bama last minute, that makes me a little less scared of them. They have a phenomenal recruiting class coming in, but as we were saying earlier, it takes time for those guys to get on the field. It really does. And I don't think we'll see the best of the Damani Jacksons, the Raleek Browns until, maybe their sophomore, junior years. So for me, I think this is a very winnable game. I'm not going to go out and say W, we're going to win, but I think Gabriel coming in there, the deep threats we mentioned, the run game that we always seem to have, I think this gives us a chance.
Will, I'll go one step further. UCLA will win that game.
I love it.
So that's, and I think there's a couple of factors at play. Number one is SC struggles at the Rose Bowl. Whenever USC and UCLA play at the Rose Bowl, it's always a very competitive game, rivalry game. You can go back to the Pete Carroll glory years, even the Leinart Bush years when they won it all. That one year they played UCLA at the Rose Bowl, they only won by 5. And so the Rose Bowl is always a tough spot for USC to play historically. And I think you have to sort of look at everything holistically. And a lot of splash with the Riley hire, deservedly so. But when you look at the guys that Riley has gotten and the guys that have made the most news, these are all 2023 recruits. This is class of 23. The only kind of game changer that they got was Raleek Brown, as you mentioned, from Mater Dei in class of 22. And so when you factor that in with Keontae Ingram leaving and, Raleek Brown, obviously a very different running back, but, sort of offsetting that production. You talked a lot about the Rick situation, and that makes you wonder, tomorrow is when Damani Jackson is going to announce between Bama and USC, and it very much felt like a package deal. Wherever Ricks was going to go, Damani Jackson was going to go. So you got to believe right now, 12 hours before he announces, I think Bama's back in front in that situation. And so if SC doesn't get Damani Jackson, it's actually a very incremental class this year. SC came in to early signing period with the 90th ranked recruiting class. That has gone up thanks to Riley, but they are still going to finish around 50-ish or so. So when you look at the matchup of USC UCLA this year and compare it to next year, it's only going to be incrementally different. When you factor in Gabriel potentially taking over for DTR, obviously UCLA needs to figure out that running back room, but it's not like SC is going to be a wildly different team in 22. They will be a wildly different team in 23. But to your point, it's going to take 1 year, not only for the system, but for that talent. And just sort of logically, now UCLA gets SC at home. They just beat SC by 30. And if you're telling me the teams aren't going to be that different from one another, granted, the coaching matters a great deal. And I'm not saying it's going to be a 30-point game, but I really like UCLA to beat SC again in 22.
I love it. I think I had them at 10-2. You had them at 9-3. Damani Jackson decision hanging in the balance. I would be personally shocked if he went to Bama, but seeing that Elias Ricks did go there could be swaying the tables there. So who knows on that? Big thanks to my main man, Jamal, for coming on. Bruins, I think we got a real chance to be successful with Chip back. We're going to keep you updated throughout the year on this transfer portal. Oh, and before we leave, we want to promote the new NFL Draft Podcast, hosted by not only myself, but the man, Jamal Madni, on the LA Football Network. It is called Draft is in Session. We're going to be breaking down all positions, different groups, players from UCLA, players from USC. There's potentially a lot of them coming into the draft this year. And we're going to be talking to Ben Fennell of the NFL Network and CBS, a draft expert in our first episode. So we're starting off with a bang. Don't miss that. It's going to be coming out Tuesday night. Jamal, any thoughts on the show?
Just super excited, Will. Draft is in session is going to be so much fun. We're going to give such great in-depth analysis about the draft. We're going to be bridging those worlds between college football and the NFL. And to be able to do it with you, what an honor and privilege it is for me. We're going to have so much fun. And I'm really excited for the two of us. And I'm really excited for our viewers. Tune in. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be educational, entertaining, all the good stuff. So stay with us here. We got big things in store for this.
Bruin Bible.